Please welcome to the stage, Trevor Lohrbeer.
Hello, everyone. My slides. Assumptions rule our lives. They affect the way we think, the way we act, and the way we experience the world. Bad assumptions can cause us stress, make us make bad decisions, and cause us to have bad things happen, like the slide going faster. Today I'm going to teach you how to challenge your assumptions, give you more creative, solve problems, and help improve your decision making. We're going to do this by eliminating unhelpful assumptions and improving necessary assumptions. Now, the types of assumptions I'm going to deal with today are facts we believe are true, explanations we tell ourselves, and rules, often phantom, that we live by. The goal is to bring you from the possible to the impossible. First thing about assumptions is write them down, brainstorm them. The process of formalizing your assumptions gives you insight into them. The devil is in the details, and we want to write them down to focus on those details. Examine your qualifiers, adjectives that set the scope of your assumptions. Avoid overgeneralizing. You want to look for words like always, never, all of, and none of. Then qualify appropriately. Be careful with black and white thinking. Be specific as possible, but not more than you can justify. Experiment with different adjectives to set your scope. And then add explicit qualifiers. Look for key words in your assumption and add adjectives that scope them properly. Often we don't add those adjectives and they need to be there. Experiment with different qualifiers. And avoid ambiguous words. Words with multiple meanings. Different people have different meanings. We each have a single word that can mean multiple things. Aim for specific definitions that have common meanings. Again, it's critical. Avoid ambiguous words. In business, a lead means one thing to sales and another thing to marketing. Define your key words in your assumptions and make sure everyone's sharing the common definition. Next, narrow your assumptions. The more specific they are, the more useful they are, and the easier they are to test. And they can be more actionable that way. The process of narrowing our assumptions usually makes them more accurate as well. But beware implicit complementary assumptions. Being specific can imply the opposite. If I say women can't drive, that might imply that men can drive, which may or may not be true. Again, beware the opposite assumptions. Use the opposite assumption to test whether your assumption is broad enough. If the opposite is also true, consider generalizing your assumption. And then generalize appropriately. Find the scope where the assumption is true, but the opposite is not. Rather than men or women being messy, maybe all people are messy sometimes. Next, ask the negative question. Turn an assumption into a negative question. It helps you explore if your assumption is true or not, and it also gives you a test to validate the validity of your assumption. If I can find one swan that isn't white, I know that all swans are not white. Next, assume the negative. Assume that your negative assumption is true. Ask what could make this true. What are the consequences if that is true? Use this to narrow or eliminate your assumptions. And then create alternative assumptions. This is particularly useful for the explanations that we have running through our heads. Our brains will pattern match and lock in on a single assumption. The alternate assumptions let us step back and look for information that lets us negate other assumptions. Thus, practice saying, I don't know. If you have no info, you have no basis for the assumption. So don't make it. Finally, explore nested assumptions. Assumptions often rely on other assumptions. So drill down, like the definitions we talked about earlier. Uncover and repeat this process as you go down into the underlying assumptions. Ensure that those are true before making your assumption being true. Finally, don't assume everything is average. What is true in general may not be true in the specific. Look for ways to identify when you are outside the normal range. Finally, in conclusion, I'd like to challenge each of you to go home tonight and think of one assumption that you can challenge. Thank you very much.